Hey YouTube, it's me, BrandonColonel again. The next video that I've got for you guys is actually a long-awaited video that I've been sitting on for quite some time, actually. I actually got this knife sometime a little close to 6, maybe 7 months ago. I don't remember exactly when I got it, but I got it quite some time ago. And obviously I've had enough time to handle it, test it out, put it through its paces, sharpen it a couple of times, and even get a couple of modifications to it. So, without further ado, as you saw in this package earlier, I'll show you what's in it, if you haven't already figured out by the title. I have the ZT 0566 CF carbon fiber. As you can tell, I've got some aftermarket hardware on here. The hardware is coming from MXG Gear, and this is the blue titanium hardware set. Now, usually the hardware set actually comes with a deep carry clip. So, I'll get that out of the way right now, that this, obviously, is not deep carry. This is, I believe it's a $45 clip by itself. And, quite frankly, I will be honest, the clip is the only thing that's worth it to me. While I really do like the rest of the hardware and the extra added color that it gives it, I don't feel that it's completely worth the price tag. That's just me. Some other people may say all the machining is definitely worth it, and any less money spent on the machining, you can give me that kind of an argument all day. Personally speaking, I just don't see it, because I've actually seen knives in the same price range that I spent for all of this hardware. I've seen entire knives come with that. Maybe not exactly such an in-depth, detailed pocket clip, but I have seen knives with titanium hardware in about the same price tag that I spent on the hardware. It being custom, maybe, but even the anodization didn't actually increase the price tag. It was more along the lines of, hey, this is the set price for the set. You can get it in either just the regular titanium, or you can get it in one of these separate colors. So even the anodization didn't cost more. So just continuing on, as for the knife itself, this is actually a really, really nice little knife. It does actually have a stainless steel frame lock, so it's not actually a titanium frame lock as you would expect from ZT. But keep in mind, this is actually one of their budget lines, before they started just simply doing titanium everything. Not to mention, if I'm not mistaken, you could actually get this exact model brand new for about $150, if not less. So this knife, it definitely is one of the more budget-friendly options. And you might still be able to get them, I don't know for sure though. But I'm pretty sure that you can still get it. However, beyond just the extra hardware that I've purchased, it's also de-assisted. And yet it still does this. This is actually a really, really nice action. Granted, I did have to fiddle around with it just a bit. Basically what I did was I tightened up the lock bar action just a bit. So I basically just bent it over a little bit more in order to tune it up. And then I took it apart and also took the washers that are inside and polished them up on an 8,000 grit waterstone, and in order to make it a little bit smoother. And it actually works just fine now. If I wanted to make it maybe just a hair smoother, or maybe it completely fix up the centering, which honestly I feel is accurate enough, but if I wanted to completely fix it, then I could actually even contact ZT and ask them to send me out a new washer set, which they'll do for free without any questions asked. And then I could actually use the bigger washer in order to replace the smaller one that's on this side. That would usually be smaller, so that way the torsion bar can actually completely fit inside and do what it needs to do. So if I get the bigger washer, then it'll actually cover up the hole for the torsion bar, but it'll actually make the action just a bit smoother. So there's that. But honestly, it really doesn't need it. As far as the ergonomics overall, this is actually a really, really nice handling knife. It feels really good in hand. The ergos, like I said, are pretty much phenomenal. I didn't really keep the standard pocket clip on here for too long, but it's the exact same as any ZT knife. The hot spots are the exact same, which is minimal. It really has minimum hotspot interference whatsoever. I actually forgot the offhand specs, but I believe that this is about 3.5 inches, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, right at 3.5 inch knife. As far as the overall length, that is about 8 inches. 7 3/4 inches. So 7 3/4 inch overall length, 3.5 inch blade length, and it's honestly the perfect size for just a standard EDC knife. It's not too big, so that way when you pull it out, everybody just screams murder knife. But at the same time, it's not so small that you look at it and just say, I can't even get all 4 fingers in front of the handle. I mean, I've seen some knives where literally you're holding it like this, and you're like, my third finger has something to touch but not anything to grip, and my pinky is just kind of flapping about wildly. I've seen knives like that. Those are annoying. I hate those. I don't buy them for a reason. Whereas this knife perfectly fits in hand, and it's just impressive. I actually did get this knife secondhand, so the grinding actually came already a little bit steeper than ZT does it, but obviously I fixed it up myself. I lowered the angle, or I guess I should say I raised the angle. But yeah, I raised the angle just slightly, and then actually brought it down so that way the grinds actually match, so that way I won't have uneven grinding. But so technically, yeah, I just removed a lot of steel, but honestly, this thing is a scalpel. Even now, after I've removed all that steel, this thing is an absolute scalpel. Here, let me take a piece of the most horrible paper that I have. This is absolutely horrible paper. Very terrible test of sharpness. Just like honestly, if it can even cut this paper, you know that you're doing something right. This is absolutely horrible paper. But yeah, I can still cut it. I do have a receipt here. Yeah, this is phenomenally sharp. And keep in mind, I actually haven't even sharpened this knife in about 2 to 3 months now. So it's actually retaining its edge quite nicely as well. This is, in fact, the LMAX version. So I do believe that some of the other versions have switched over to S35VN. But yeah, this actually is the LMAX version. Honestly, on these, they did just fine. I don't think that they had as much problem with LMAX as everybody made it out to be. Are they as good as Microtech? No. Microtech does a near perfect heat treat of LMAX. But ZT does well enough to the point where it does work. It does what it's supposed to, and you don't have to complain about it. So, if you don't like LMAX the way that ZT does it, just don't buy it. You can get the S35VN version. But for my purposes, this is just fine. It holds an edge very well, very keenly, and even with the edge dialed back as far as it is, it's just fine. As you can see, it takes a mirror polish quite well. Here. I'm trying to get that into focus as best as I can. Well, you can probably see the reflectivity going on there. But anyways, the carbon fiber, gotta say, not the best, but it definitely is carbon fiber, and it feels quite nice in hand. So, it might not be the best carbon fiber. It's pretty much on par with the 0770, which, like I said, it's not the best carbon fiber, but it's decent. I'll just put it that way. It's decent. It does look like fairly cheap carbon fiber, but again, you're paying not even $200 for this stuff. So here, let me actually pull out a couple of other carbon fiber knives that I have in my collection that I've just got sitting right here, and I'll show you what I mean as far as it's not the best carbon fiber. Here is one bit of carbon fiber. This is really tight weave. Yeah, just really tight weave, and it's got dimensionality to it because of how they've contoured it, how they've milled it, and it's overall just a really nice example. And then there's this, a little bit bigger pattern, but again, with the milling and contouring, then it gives it a lot more dimensionality to it, and it's really interesting. Then you get into marble shred carbon fiber, particularly with this blue shred carbon fiber that they've got going on here. And again, it's just this side, I almost forgot, but it's really interesting. You get to this and it's a little one note, but it still is carbon fiber, and it's really nice at that, and it does give it a little added class. So it's not exactly something that I can complain about, but it is something to note if you're looking for the utmost quality in everything that you get. This is not exactly the highest end carbon fiber that you could possibly find. So there is that. As far as the lock bar goes, that is one of the only true complaints that I have about this knife, is getting used to this lock bar actually will be quite painful. I'll just put it at that. It is quite painful. After you've built up a callus on your thumb specifically designated for this knife, you shouldn't have a single problem. But otherwise, there's almost no space or lock bar relief. There's nothing here. And in the jimping on here, while it does give you traction, it really hurts. So, for about a good 1.5, maybe 2 weeks, my thumb was in serious pain. Because, obviously, I'm playing with my knife, I'm getting used to my knife, I'm working in my knife, I'm making sure that it is exactly as I want it, I'm testing it out, finding excuses to fiddle around with it, to play with it, and after a while, this thumb just hurts. Like I said, eventually I built up the calluses, and this knife doesn't affect it anymore. But do keep in mind that while the jimping on here isn't exactly sharp, it is painful if you play with your knife. One thing that I've found that actually does slightly help out is using the absolute edge of your thumb, or as close to the edge as you can get without it being just painful, just from literally sticking your thumb in sideways. And using the smallest, most narrow part of your thumb to jam in, and then push the lock bar out of the way. And that's the easiest way to do it. Beyond that, like I said, you could just simply build up your callus, and then that'll work just fine. That way you can literally just put pressure on your thumb, and you can probably see the indent right there right now. But yeah, after you've built up a callus, that's all that you need. But other than that, you might want to trick for the first little bit, so that way you can get used to it. Let's see. As far as pocket carry, it really disappears into your pocket. You don't notice it. There's really no hot spots overall when you're holding this knife, particularly if you've got all of the MXG gear on it. Yeah, there's really just no hot spots anywhere, so good job on this clip, because it is pretty much the perfect clip. If I would have to pick the most uncomfortable spot of the knife, it's right here on your pinky. That spot right there would have to be the most uncomfortable spot, but even then, if you're actually cutting, it really doesn't have any feel to it whatsoever. You don't notice it, and just overall, it's not at all something that I can truly complain about, but if I had to pick the most uncomfortable spot, that would have to be it. But yeah, pocket carry, you don't notice anything. And overall, this is just a really, really solid, stout little knife. You could easily take this out just as easily camping as you would use this at your more dressed up knife. It's a really great little folder overall. And obviously, seeing as you can get all this aftermarket hardware, the price tag actually makes it a little bit easier to do that with. Because particularly if you can get one used, then you really don't end up spending all that much money on it, and so it makes the fact of how much you saved a little bit easier to then go out and buy some aftermarket hardware. Personally speaking, unless you just like going all out, I'd recommend it at most getting the clip and maybe the pivot. The hardware, meh. I don't really think that the hardware is all that necessary. So, I might possibly go for the standoffs again, but other than that, I really don't think that it's all that necessary. Yeah, the most that I might do is get the pivot and another pocket clip. So let's compare it to a couple of other commonly held knives. The ZT-0350 is probably the most popular knife on the planet that I own. At least one of. So, here, let's get them side by side here. So, as you can see, it's a little bit bigger than the 0350, but really not by all that much. I think that the handle is just simply a bit bigger. Here, let's even just get it pivot to pivot. Yeah, even then you can still see that this is bigger if you push it back, just so that way it's just the end to end. Yeah, the 566 is a bit bigger than the 0350, but the 0350 is a lot chunkier. It's not quite as ergonomic in the hand. This feels like a beast. This feels a little bit more elegant, but works like a beast. So, if you're looking at the two of these, this is just a straight up and down workhorse that I don't mind beating the crap out of. This is a little bit more elegant knife that I would like to keep a little bit better looking, but at the same time, if push came to shove, I don't mind beating on this. I don't mind cranking on it just to say, hey, it's a knife, I can resharpen it later, might as well dull it out a few times. So, I'm fine. This should not be a problem at all in any way, shape, fashion, or form. Let's see next to another knife. Got the ZT-0801 here. Not quite as popular, but here, the 0801 pretty much dwarfs the 566. It dwarfs it in handle size. Well, it doesn't quite dwarf it in handle size. But as far as blade size goes, it's not all that much different. So, when you factor in handle and blade, yeah, it's a little bit dwarfed. So, but yeah, so overall, it's definitely a bigger knife here. The action on this is definitely a bit better, and not too much more expensive. Overall, this is actually a little bit more pimpable, so to speak, because you can actually do a little bit more with the titanium frame. You can anodize it, cool, funky colors. The pivot system is actually a little bit better, but then again, this is almost a $200 knife. This is actually closer to the $100 range, and particularly depending on the deal that you can find, that would make it even more so a deal. So, that just simply goes to show the difference in the price ranges. Let's see, do I have any other knives for comparison that I want to use? Could have sworn I had at least one more ZT. Well, guess not. Yeah, what the heck, let's actually just show a smaller knife just for the fun of it. Got a Kaiser Gemini here, just simply to show you a smaller knife. They're actually almost the same size. The handle actually fits about the same on this as it does here. The only difference is there's just a slight bit more hanging out down here, whereas the Gemini is literally just enough to get a full 4-finger grip. But yeah, as far as a stock ZT 0566, I definitely would recommend de-assisting it unless you just simply like assisted knives. That is a point that I would need to make. If you like to de-assist your knives, keep in mind, even after I've worked my magic on it, this does have a fairly light detent, to the point where you really do have to push button it. You can light switch it, but it takes a lot more effort, and a slight, however slight it is, it does still take a slight wrist flick. But otherwise, if you push button it, it comes out just fine. Not necessarily with authority, but it does come out just fine. If you use a thumb stud, then that's when it can come out with some authority to it. It's not quite as solid as my 0350, which actually comes out even harder now that it's been de-assisted. Comes out faster, harder, more solid. Honestly, this knife I entirely prefer to being assisted. But this one, as far as the authority, it can go either way, but I still do much prefer a manual over an assisted blade. So, I would actually much rather just simply take this, and it does have a detent, so I'll show you here the detent being sucked in. There you go. So as you can see, it does have one, but it's late sucking it in, showing that, yeah, it does have it, but it's fairly light. Now, it's not necessarily just going to shake out on you, so you don't truly have to worry about it coming open in your pocket, but I would keep it in the back of your mind if you back pocket carry. I do, and I haven't had a problem with this one so far. But then again, at the same time, I am fairly careful with it, so if I'm going to grab for it and I think that even for a second I've done something that might possibly open it, then I'll actually kind of go to my back pocket and feel around the outside of it and kind of squeeze in, and if I feel that sharp swedge there, then I know full well the knife isn't open, I don't have to worry, and I can just simply dig in and just simply grab out my blade. And because this is a scary, scary sharp knife that I do not want my fingers coming into contact with for any such purpose or reason. So, overall, my impressions of the knife is that I would recommend modifying it a little bit, because at stock it's a little bland and boring. Modified, it's definitely a lot better. Stupid, scary sharp, especially once you put a new edge on it. But the lock bar is just a bit tough and not exactly the best. So, like I said, keep that in mind, and you should be more than fine. So, I'll cut it off here. Just a bit of a heads up for the next video. As you already saw in this video, I showed this little knife. Not a production, not a mid-tech. This is the real deal. I'll leave that for the next video, guys. You should be seeing this one sometime in the next week. This video is actually is coming on the heels of a video that I tried to record last night. I intended on recording this one at the same day, but then it literally took like 8 hours for whatever reason to upload my sharpening rant from last night. And I'll probably be posting this video probably anywhere from another 3 days from now at the recording date, which is Friday the 14th. I'll probably be posting this video anywhere from 3 days to a week from now. So it'll actually be quite some time before I post this video, because I do plan on recording it probably tonight after I get back home from work, or maybe sometime tomorrow, but I'll be recording this thing soon. However, you guys won't see it for a while. So, as always, YouTube, stay safe.